This week on Arizona Illustrated, we'll look back to the Arizona case that created Miranda Rights. Fly with raptors at the Arizona Sonora Desert Museum. Singing with paint and painting with music. And what to do about downtown from the vault. Welcome to Arizona Illustrated. I'm Tom McNamara. What comes to mind when you hear Miranda Rights? Well, most people can recite those rights from memory. If taken into custody, law enforcement officers are required to inform you of certain rights before they question you. It doesn't matter where the questioning occurs, on a busy street, in your home, or in jail. If an officer wants to ask you questions and use your answers in court, they must read you your rights. And that requirement is due to an arrest that happened over 50 years ago right here in Arizona.
You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to speak to an attorney. If you cannot afford a lawyer, one will be provided for you at government expense. The so-called Miranda Rights have been a part of American life for more than 4 decades, known to attorneys, criminals, and fans of TV detective shows. But they started in an unexpected, modest way when a Mesa produce worker named Ernesto Miranda became the prime suspect in a series of crimes in 1963.
He came back to Phoenix after being in jail in various places around the country for fairly minor crimes. And he, for some reason, started preying on young women. He kept picking them up at the corner of Missouri and 7th Street.
3 women had been victimized in similar ways. A man described as a 25-year-old Hispanic or Italian had forced them into his car and either raped or attempted to rape them. One of those cases was assigned to Carol Cooley, who had become a Phoenix police detective 1 year earlier. He connected the dots with the help of a license plate number that eventually led him and his partner to the Mesa home of Ernie Miranda.
So we came into the living room and we said, would you mind going downtown with us? We took him to the department. We set him down in the interview room. We called them interrogation rooms back in those days.
For about 30 minutes, Cooley interviewed Miranda and told him that police knew that he'd abducted and raped a young woman, but Miranda repeatedly denied the accusations. So Cooley asked him to join a lineup. Miranda agreed. 2 of the alleged victims picked Miranda out, but said they weren't absolutely certain. A disappointed Cooley brought Miranda back to the interrogation room.
And his question to me was, how did I do? And my answer was, well, you didn't do so good, Ernie. He says, they identified me then. I said, yes, they did. So he said, well, I guess I ought to tell you about it. I said, yeah, I think you should, Ernie. I do hereby swear that I make this statement voluntarily and of my own free will, with no threats, coercion, or promises of immunity, and with full knowledge of my legal rights, understanding any statement I make may be used against me.
His confession helped send Ernesto Miranda to prison. He was sentenced to serve 20 years, but the case caught the attention of the American Civil Liberties Union, which believed the poor and uneducated weren't being told about their constitutional rights.
At that point, Lewis and Rocha was asked to get involved, particularly John Flynn, a legendary criminal defense lawyer, and John Frank, a legendary constitutional lawyer.
Frank and Flynn petitioned the Supreme Court, which accepted the case and heard Miranda versus Arizona in February of 1966.
I believe that the record indicates that at no time during the interrogation was he advised either of his rights to remain silent, of his right to counsel, or of his right to consult with counsel.
John Flynn argued on Miranda's behalf before the Supreme Court. Gary Nelson, an assistant attorney general in Arizona, argued the state's case.
I was trying to convince the court at the time. I thought that our case pretty much complied with it, that what we did in Arizona at that time pretty much complied with all the things they wanted done.
If the extreme position is adopted that says he has to either have counsel at this stage or intelligently waive counsel, that a serious problem in the enforcement of our criminal law will occur. And when counsel is introduced at interrogation, interrogation ceases.
On June 13, 1966, a 5-4 majority of the court reversed Miranda's rape conviction, making his name synonymous with suspects' rights. But the High Court's decision wasn't retroactive and didn't free Miranda. He remained in the Florence prison, becoming a celebrity to his fellow inmates.
He became famous, and the inmates down there believed that he was a hero. And the theory that they had down there is Miranda doesn't confess, which is just utterly wrong. He did confess, but he became a hero, so much so that when I went down to interview him to work on getting this other conviction reversed, I started asking him questions, and he refused to answer because he said, you know, I'm known as Miranda who doesn't confess. Well, of course he confessed.
Miranda cashed in on his famous name after he left prison in March of 1975. He autographed Miranda warning cards and added the date of the Supreme Court decision, and he sold them for a few dollars apiece. Neither his celebrity nor his constitutional rights could protect him, though, after a poker game on January 31st, 1976 went awry.
He was in a card game in the section of Phoenix that used to be called the Deuce, which is now where the Civic Center is, in one of those, the Amapola Bar, actually, and got into a disagreement over who was cheating at cards.
Miranda got the better of a fist fight, but two adversaries slit his throat with a lettuce knife and left him on the floor of the bar.
One was disappeared into Mexico. The other was arrested and presumably read his rights.
Ernesto Miranda's legacy is attached to the rights that have survived numerous challenges over the decades. But it's his attorneys who deserve the credit.
The two of them were the perfect storm for this case because John was able to put a brief together that was dazzling, and then John Flynn, who wasn't much with a pen or a typewriter, but boy, when he opened his mouth, people listened.
Or to some, the blame.
The real loser in this decision, in my opinion, is John Q. Citizen and the victims of crimes and those victims' families. In my day, a lot of crimes were solved by confessions, a lot. And a lot of convictions were obtained through those confessions.
But attorneys on both sides of the 1966 argument have come to agree on the decision's importance and its lasting power.
I think we ought to be proud of it.
People should not be compelled to give confessions without knowing what their rights are. A lot of people don't know they have constitutional rights, and after Miranda, now they all do.
Like what you see on Arizona Illustrated? Visit our webpage at azpm.org to watch and share videos from this episode. You'll also find stories from future programs, an easy way to submit your own story idea, an archive of past episodes of Arizona Illustrated, and you'll find everything you need to stay connected with public broadcasting in Southern Arizona. AZPM.org. Depending on the time of year, as many as 44 different kinds of raptors can be found in Arizona. During the cooler months, the Arizona Sonora Desert Museum provides visitors with a stunning up-close and personal experience with some of those species in their natural habitat. We had a look for ourselves.
You know them when you see them. There's no mistaking birds that are built to eat flesh. They're fast and fearless, and they carry their own weapons. We call them raptors. That's Latin for seize or plunder, and it's the name for what we call birds of prey. Many humans are oblivious to the raptor's presence, and others want to get as close as possible.
In the raptor's world, the females are larger than the males.
You can't get any closer than at the Arizona Sonora Desert Museum west of Tucson. Featuring orphaned birds unable to be returned to the wild, the experience truly lives up to its name. Raptor, free flight.
Good morning. Can you all hear me? I'm Carol, and I'm a volunteer with Raptor Free Flight. And
we can't restrain the birds, so when they're loose, they're loose. They can take off and go anywhere they want to go.
These birds are going to be flying all around you and very, very, very close to you.
Sometimes they dart right in between people.
Oh, look, right over our head.
They treat the public, the audience, as they would a group of bushes or something like that.
You never know what will happen, so you really can't have a prepared speech, and sometimes you have to tap dance. You just have to wing it with the bird.
The unpredictable stars of the show include a special gray hawk.
I think it's the only one free-flying in the country, to my knowledge. There's about 80 nesting pair here in southern Arizona.
One of the strongest of all raptors, a great horned owl.
They live in any type of habitat in Arizona, including the city.
A hawk named for its rusty color, the ferruginous hawk.
The largest type of hawk in North America, about 4.5 foot wingspan, really impressive bird.
The bird with Hollywood's most famous and overused hawk call, the red-tailed.
The most common of the large hawks that you'll find anywhere in the country, and she's trained to soar 1,000 feet or more above the desert floor here and then dive down in a pretty spectacular dive to the glove.
One of the fastest animals on Earth, the prairie falcon.
The prairie falcon can fly at speeds over 200 miles an hour.
And one of the most commonly seen urban hawks, the Harrises.
And they're unique in that fact that they're the one of only 2 species of raptor in the entire world that live and hunt in these family groups. And it's more evolved here in the Sonoran Desert than anywhere else in the world. And we think it's a direct adaptation for the difficulty that they face hunting in the cactus forest here.
Sometime if the whole family sees the prey move, they'll all converge on it at once and attempt to keep it from gaining cover.
All this swooping, soaring, diving, and aerial acrobatics is immensely entertaining and awe-inspiring. But there's also a deeper purpose.
At the end of the day, you know, it really doesn't matter to me personally if people can remember how many eggs the birds lay, you know, what kind of prey that they capture, as long as they leave at the end of the day with this newfound awe and appreciation for the natural world that we live in.
If you enjoy animals and what they do and them and their best, I mean, this is it. I mean, it really is.
I thought I was going to get hit by one of them. It was like so close.
The last time my husband and I were out here, the Harris hawk went vertically right between our heads.
Don't miss it.
Excellent. Awesome flight photo opportunity.
If you see a beautiful flower or a rock or an artifact, leave it. Take pictures of it.
It's a conservation message, I think, and not just conserving raptors. None of the species we use are endangered or anything like that, but more conserving and appreciating the natural world.
The sights and sounds from Raptor Free Flight often leave deep and lasting impressions, no matter if it's your first time or your 100th.
It's always a magical experience to me. That's the biggest thing. That's the kind of the key word that always comes to mind is, you know, I've never outgrown or conceptualized completely the fact that we can create this bond with a wild animal. Again, that quintessential wild animal, those hawks, eagles, falcons, owls, turn them loose and have them decide to fly back. And it's just, it teaches you not only a lot about the natural world and how animals operate, but also how to better build relationships and keep relationships with people in your personal life.
And hope you get brushed by a feather so you can have 25 years of good luck, okay?
The Raptor Free Flight program is offered twice daily until April 5th at the Arizona Sonora Desert Museum. On any given night in Tucson, you can find live music of all types: jazz, reggae, rock, classical, and each musician is inspired, driven to perform for different reasons. Our next story delves into the personal history and experiences that fuel musician and artist Salvador Duran.
Relación entre lo que es el escenario con las personas es como un intercambio de emociones. Estuve en pueblos, en teatros y la música alternativa, el folclore, y pues también tenía la satisfacción de pensar o de sentir que estaba haciendo algo bien porque me gustaba.
Salvador Duran has always been able to connect with others through music. Before moving to Tucson more than a decade ago, Salvador was a long-time singer in his native Mexico. He says that music helps him cope with the joys and sorrows he left behind.
Es como una medicina, porque en la medida en que uno va formándose, pues en la música te permite o quieres tener un poco de claridad de qué es lo que sucede en tu entorno, qué es lo que sucede en la música.
And that passion of Salvador's is something local musicians couldn't help but notice. Over the years, Salvador has performed with Calexico and most recently, the Mendoza Orquesta.
Y la primera vez que tocamos fue verdaderamente muy festivo, ¿no? Sentí que había un buen espíritu de colaboración.
But music wasn't really the reason Salvador first came to Tucson.
Porque yo más bien vine aquí según venía yo a pintar y dejar la parte musical.
He says that art is not only a lifestyle, but a tool that helps him make sense of life.
Para modificar algunas cosas culturales o políticas o de conciencia. Me di cuenta de que cuando uno expresa en la pintura, tienes la posibilidad de decir o de mostrar cosas que tanto hermosas como negativas.
As a young adult, Salvador had experiences in Mexico that shaped his character and influenced his art.
Estuve yo de militante en la Ciudad de México, estuve aquí en la Universidad de Sonora, fui a El Salvador casi como un año. Dentro de eso están los riesgos, como yo que he perdido a un hermano desaparecido, amigos que no se sabe dónde están. Tratar de hacer un cambio más a través de la educación, a través del arte. Entonces, en ese sentido, el arte te puede ayudar. En ese caso me ha ayudado a mí también. Que es recordar todo lo que ha sucedido, no dar pie a que se borren aspectos, tampoco estar con el remordimiento, con el dolor de la pérdida, ¿no? Y de esa forma, de esa relación entre la pintura y la música, hice la frase, canto mi pintura y pinto mi música.
Caminando por las calles de Tucson, fui corriendo para encontrar algún trabajo. Voy contigo, dijo.
Pero aquí encontré la capacidad de tocar a una persona, ¿no? La gente es muy fraternal. Yo me iba a ir a otro lugar que se llamaba Victoria, en Canadá, pero finalmente decidí quedarme en Tucson, porque el confort que sentí aquí fue lo que me hizo decidir quedarme, y pues hasta ahora no me he equivocado, ¿no?
Remember when downtown shut down at night? There were but a few restaurants, no streetcar, and live music? Forget about it. It was this bleak scene that inspired the Tucson City Council to take action 30 years ago from the vault.
In September, the Tucson-Pima Arts Council asked a team of consultants to look at the city's cultural needs. After interviewing 46 producing organizations, the consultant estimates 451,000 Tucsonans attended performances in 1985, but the potential audience is 865,000. The biggest need seems to be for small theaters of 500 seats or less that are inexpensive to use. The consultant recommends upgrading the community center's Little Theater for $500,000, the Music Center for $1 million, and building a new outdoor amphitheater for $1.5 million, all to be paid for by bond issues. The consultant recommends that the historic Temple of Music and Art become the new permanent home of the Arizona Theater Company. But it does not suggest where ATC might find the nearly $6 million necessary to buy and restore this condemned building. ATC is enthusiastic about moving to the temple, but says it has neither the money nor the desire to own a theater. The consultant also recommends spending $2.5 million to renovate the downtown library and make it into a cultural center, including a small theater. But that would put on hold plans to put a child care center for city employees here. The consultant says the art districts enhance the face of cities at night.
In the downtown Tucson context, what we're looking at most enthusiastically, I think, is the opportunity to create activity in the downtown area, especially after business hours and on weekends.
What the Tucson-Pima Arts Council is encouraging the City Council to do is that since we have come at arts and cultural planning from many directions, that you first endorse the venue study as a point of departure, a first blush look at bringing it all together, something to focus on and work from that integrates arts and cultural planning into the overall downtown planning.
Councilman Tom Volge moved Tucson accept the recommendations and urged the city staff to work with downtown arts, library, development, and major businesses to draft a plan for implementing the proposals. The motion passed unanimously to applause, but City Manager Joel Valdez warned no money has yet been allocated. Mayor Lou Murphy, just back from a Washington, D.C. conference on the impact of Grand-Rudman federal budget cuts on cities, cautioned that funding sources for new performing venues are unclear.
If the community can accept this as a blueprint for its future, it can look toward determining the methodology for accomplishing it.
The consultant did not recommend renovating the Fox or Rialto theaters downtown, saying it would be too expensive and there is no proven demand for their use.
That's it for this episode of Arizona Illustrated. Thank you for joining us, and let us know what you think of the program and submit your own story ideas at azpm.org. Next week, a rodeo veteran chases the gold buckle at the Tucson Rodeo. What it takes to be a rescuer. The man who helped introduce the Southwest to itself, Big Jim Griffith. And there's nothing like the Tucson Rodeo Parade from the vault. I'm Tom McNamara. See you next week.